In 2020, the Chinese government started what has come to be known as its crackdown on the country's tech sector. China's tech crackdown thus refers to the Chinese government's recent efforts to increase regulatory oversight and control over the country's technology industry. The Chinese tech crackdown has included a range of measures such as increased scrutiny of tech companies' business practices, stricter regulations on data privacy and security, and crackdowns on monopolistic practices. The crackdown has had a significant impact on China's tech industry and on global markets. Many of China's biggest tech companies, such as Alibaba and Tencent, have faced increased regulatory scrutiny and have been forced to change their business practices to comply with new regulations. The crackdown has also led to a significant decline in the valuations of many Chinese tech companies, as investors have become increasingly concerned about the risks posed by increased regulatory oversight. The reasons for the crackdown are complex and multifaceted. Some analysts argue that the Chinese government is seeking to exert greater control over the country's tech industry in order to protect national security and promote economic stability. Others suggest that the crackdown is a response to concerns about the growing power and influence of China's tech giants, which some see as a threat to the government's authority. In this video, we examine China's crackdown by looking at its timeline, its areas of focus, how it's winding down, the impact it has had, and what the future may have in store for China's tech sector. The crackdown in the Chinese tech sector started in November 2020 when Chinese regulators stopped the IPO Ant Group, a fintech company affiliated with Alibaba, just days before it was set to go public. On Christmas Eve 2020, regulators launched an antitrust investigation into Alibaba, accusing the company of monopolistic behavior and anti-competitive practices. In January 2021, Tencent was then fined for failing to report its past acquisitions and investments for antitrust review. In April 2021, Chinese regulators fined Alibaba a record $2.8 billion for antitrust violations. This was equivalent to 4% of the company's revenues in 2019. After the fine was handed out to Alibaba, the antitrust authorities summoned no less than 34 tech companies, including tech giants Alibaba, Tencent and Meituan, to a meeting. In that meeting, the authorities demanded that the companies pay full heed to the warning of Alibaba's case. In July 2021, Chinese regulators ordered the removal of ride-hailing giant Didi from app stores, citing concerns over data security. More specifically, the very powerful Chinese internet regulator, the Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC, launched an unprecedented probe into Didi for violations of data and national security. This took place 2 days after the company launched a $4.4 billion IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. At this time, the market regulator also started to investigate merger cases dating back to the early 2000s and fined tech firms for failing to report deals for an antitrust review. The regulator ended up issuing at least 22 fines of 500,000 yuan each, the maximum penalty allowed under China's anti-monopoly law. Companies that were fined include Alibaba, Tencent, and Didi Global. In August 2021, China's National Press and Publication Administration announced new rules restricting the amount of time minors could spend playing video games. This wasn't the first time such rules were put in place. In 2019, it was decided that players under the age of 18 were limited to no more than 90 minutes of gaming on weekdays and 3 hours a day on weekends. However, the new rules were more severe, stating that children and teenagers were barred from online gaming on school days and limited to 1 hour a day on weekends and holiday evenings. In September 2021, China's State Administration for Market Regulation issued new draft rules that stated that companies that want to go public overseas are required to undergo cybersecurity reviews. The draft regulation was designed for the implementation of China's 3 major laws governing data collection and usage: the 2017 Cybersecurity Law, the 2021 Data Security Law, and the 2021 Personal Information Protection Law. In October 2021, food delivery company Meituan was fined about $534 million. The regulatory authority claimed that Meituan was using its dominant market position to force merchants into exclusive deals. In January 2022, China's cyberspace regulator launched a campaign to crack down on apps that it claimed were spreading vulgar content and harming the physical and mental health of minors. In July 2022, Didi Global was fined about $1.2 billion for data violations. This ended a year-long investigation into Didi's data practices. So, what has really been happening to the Chinese tech sector during the crackdown period? What have the regulatory authorities been focusing on? The China Project argues that there are three main things that have been going on since late 2020. First, antitrust probes. China's market watchdog, the State Administration of Market Regulation, was established in 2018. During the crackdown, it has launched investigations on dozens of internet companies and have already fined several companies for antitrust violations, as we mentioned before. In November 2021, it was reported that tech giants Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, JD.com, Meituan, Didi, and ByteDance had committed no less than 43 antitrust violations. The most common violation was failing to notify the regulators that they had reached a specific market concentration after a new acquisition. Examples of Chinese tech companies that were fined for overstepping antitrust regulations during the tech crackdown, those include e-commerce company Alibaba, retail and delivery giant Meituan, music, gaming and social media giant Tencent, the search engine company Baidu, China's leading ride-hailing company Didi, and ByteDance, the tech giant and owner of TikTok. The second part of the crackdown focuses on data security. Beijing has long taken a very lax approach to issues such as data privacy. In a previous video on China's AI ecosystem, we covered this and the fact that it, for a long period of time, gave Chinese tech companies a competitive advantage compared to their Western counterparts and allowed for a very fast growth of the domestic tech sector. However, things have changed. In 2014, President Xi Jinping formed the Cyberspace Administration of China, which oversees data security. This government agency handles the vast online censorship machine and is responsible for making sure that data on Chinese citizens do not end up outside the country. In 2021, the Chinese government announced the new data security law of the People's Republic of China, which the Cyberspace Administration of China has been enforcing since then. Numerous tech companies have been hit by the enforcement of data security regulations, including, as mentioned earlier, ride-hailing company Didi, which received a very heavy fine for not following these regulations. The third part of the crackdown process has been focusing on capital excesses in the tech sector. China's top leaders gathered in December 2020 and vowed to make sure the tech sector did not expand capital disorderly. In other words, they wanted to avoid tech companies' growth at the expense of the public's interests. This view by the top leaders can be understood from a historical perspective, as the CCP has a long history of important leaders arguing that private sector interests should not impose on the public interest. Examples of sectors that have fallen under this category include fintech, with the early suspension of Ant Group's IPO, and media and gaming, with ByteDance and Tencent having been significantly affected. A third sector that has been hit hard is for-profit and online tutoring. The for-profit tutoring industry was huge at the time, as many Chinese parents were willing to pay significant amounts of money for the children to have the chance to be successful in school. The crackdown on this sector began in July 2021 and devastated companies such as New Oriental Education and TAL Education Group. Once giant and highly profitable companies, these and many others have not been able to recover from this crackdown. In December 2022, President Xi Jinping addressed the Central Economic Work Conference in Beijing. At the meeting, it was concluded that internet platforms will be supported to fully display their capabilities in boosting the economy, job creation, and international competition. This clearly signaled that the crackdown was winding down. In the beginning of January 2023, Guo Shuqing, the Communist Party boss at the People's Bank of China and the chairman of China's Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, said in an interview that the crackdown on fintech operations of numerous internet companies was basically over. Guo Shuqing also said that the next step would be to promote the healthy development of internet platforms. The hope is that this will enable them to lead economic growth, create more jobs, and compete globally. That same day, Jack Ma gave up control over Ant Group after an agreement among the shareholders that the business was to be restructured. Finally, in July 2023, the probe into China's tech giants seemed to have come to an end as Beijing imposed more than $1 billion in fines on Ant Group and Tencent holdings. As the sustained jump in economic activity that Chinese policymakers were hoping for after lifting the zero-COVID restrictions in December 2022 didn't materialize, and the high unemployment levels, especially among young Chinese, persisted, Beijing needed the tech giants to drive growth and create new employment opportunities more than ever. The effects of the tech crackdown so far have been significant. Trillions of dollars in market value from Chinese tech companies have been wiped out. One of the most dynamic sectors in the Chinese economy has been kneecapped. It has had direct effects on products, services, and economic activity across the country. Another direct consequence of the crackdown has been a serious blow to the job market, in particular for younger Chinese. China's job numbers have continued to worsen, and unemployment is especially severe among the young. In July 2023, it was reported that the unemployment rate among young people ages 16 to 24 was 21.3%, a new record high. The tech crackdown has resulted in many young Chinese seeing a future full of potential in a dynamic sector disappear before their eyes. The Chinese tech giants, which previously rivaled the US counterparts in terms of size, are now much smaller. This of course doesn't have to be a negative outcome, as monopolies or oligopolies tend to stifle innovation. But it does beg the question of how the private sector will be able to trust policymakers in the future. While domestic tech companies previously were allowed to grow into some of the largest tech giants in the world, it's difficult for tech entrepreneurs today to know how the venture they build will be treated in the future. This is perhaps even more the case for foreign companies that are viewing China. Long having been known as a difficult and in many cases impossible market to operate in for foreign tech companies, the long and comprehensive crackdown brings with it even more uncertainty for international companies that are considering expanding their businesses to China. This could very well turn out to be the most important damage done by the crackdown, stifling innovative and dynamic entrepreneurs from building the next generation tech giants in the world's second largest economy, and thus limiting the country's ability to compete globally in the tech space. Only time will tell how much freedom the Chinese tech sector will be afforded by Beijing. To sum up, the Chinese tech crackdown over the last couple of years has been comprehensive. New regulations have been put in place and several tech industries have been affected severely, not the least the once thriving fintech industry. It seems like the crackdown has come to an end, but we'll have to see if the Chinese tech sector will be able to re-emerge as the dynamic powerhouse it once was. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on China's tech crackdown. If you have, and if you want to see more related content, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I look forward to seeing you next time.